are made and possibilities are endless. I'm Adedoja Salam Adeniyi. I live in Lagos, inside Lagos.
Kolishlashla Mandela was born into the Madiba clan on 18th July 1918. He got involved in politics in 1942 as he helped to form ANC Youth League. He was married to Evelyn Mays and they had 4 children. Mandela was arrested in a countrywide police swoop on 5th December 1956, which led to the 1956 treason trial.
Thank you for staying with us on Standpoint, and we're still discussing Nigeria's electricity grid system collapse, which happened for the optimum time today. And we have joining us for this conversation the convener, Integration Summit Group, Chris Akio. Thank you for joining us on Standpoint.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So for the optimum time, the grid collapse has happened again, and Nigerians may have even lost account of what's going on. What's your assessment of the state of our power sector and what we're experiencing? Is this as a result of a shortfall in manpower or a lack of maintenance culture?
Okay, so it's a true reflection of Nigerian state where we just take everything for granted. Power generation across the globe are taking a different dimension, except in our country. It's not rocket science. It's generating power and then transmitting it as it should be. Somehow, somewhere, it's a reflection of the failure in our country and everything. Simple things as even road we are not able to deal with. But to have 10 times collapse within January and now it's a call for responsibility within and among leaders. Countries like Egypt, countries like Morocco, the African countries, South Africa, they've maintained steady power supply by just doing simple things. All these grid failures, because we're not expanding the grid. We've been able to move from 4,000 megawatts to 7,000 megawatts. We can't distribute that. The grid can't take that lot. And I wonder why it's so impossible. Simple things as planning and then getting the experts to implement is what's causing all of this grid failure. We keep patching things and this can take us anywhere. Because when there's a grid failure or collapse, there's economic loss, there's time wasted, there's financial losses to people, businesses suffer the setback. We don't even have enough of this energy yet to distribute, and we're having issues. A country with, if you follow the global standard, you're asking for 1,000 megawatts for 1 million persons. So a country with 200 million people would need about 200 megawatts of electricity. Now we're talking about 7 to 15,000 that were struggling from it since 2015 till now. We've not been able to achieve that. And even now that they say, in quotes, we have 7,000 megawatts in the national store bank, we can't push 4,000 without having grid collapse. So definitely, we need to go back to the drawing board and look at it again. Time passed when they say, because it was basically the responsibility of the federal government to do that. Now with the concurrent list and amendment of the Constitution, I think in 2022, if I'm correct, by the National Assembly, where states can generate and transmit, I think all the states and private sector need to get involved so we can solve the power problem. I think government needs to deliberately provide the funding. I was just doing a quick check and I realized that they've been having deals with Siemens in 2015. The same Siemens AG have been able to go to Egypt and increase their power bank from about 15,000 to about 60,000 megawatts, and they have steady power supply. So there is something with our policy system, with the implementers of our policy system, with the drivers of our policy system, and that's what's reflecting on the grid. I think that's the major problem.
Right, and it wasn't very shocking this week that just after the committee set up by the federal government submitted its report, there was another grid collapse again. Well, we've heard from the federal government through the TCN saying that it's the DISCO's inability to take generated electricity. Apparently, the DISCOs may be the weakest link that we have here. But whose job is it to ensure that all the value chains and operators are doing their best in terms of energy delivery?
Exactly. So we're saying the same thing. Until the implementers of policies, the drivers of policies, do what is right in terms of enforcing the right things, we can continue to pass the buck and blame government and people and agencies. But you have NEPA or PHC, and then you take it and you give it to a sector of investors according to you. And you carry out your investment and hand over to a private sector, and then you muzzle them. All they have done since they took over the sector to keep increasing tariffs. There is no meters. Most homes in Nigeria, whether it's the prepaid or even the other analog ones, you can't find it. They just build people arbitrary to make money, so it's profiteering. They are not investing to expand the grid because they do not even have the capacity. Friends getting together, muzzling the rest of the country, annexing this business to themselves, and now they can't expand it. But with the decentralization of these processes now, I think that states should get involved with partners that are willing, both globally and locally, to do what's happening. In Abia State, for instance, I think Governor Uti has been able to do something. In Edo State, they've also done something with their funeral plants, but they're still not able to distribute. Unfortunately, the one that is being distributed, an average home cannot get 6 hours of steady power supply, except you're in the band A. And secretly or covertly, they've continuously increased the price of even that power that you can't find. So yes, you can blame the discos, but what's the job of the disco? To distribute and collect money. So except they set a policy where discos must expand, transmit, and distribute, it's not going to work. There's a transmission company separate from the discos. So the discos, if you give them energy, they distribute. If you don't give them energy, they say they don't have. Unfortunately, whether you consume energy or not, if you're not a prepared meter, they bill you. The regulatory system is swapped. The Nigerian Electric Regulatory Company needs to sit up and get it done. And then this separation of power, they need to find a way where it's a bundle. I expect that if I generate power, I should be able to transmit power. I should be able to sell power to those who need it at my price. And then people can choose which power they want to run to, if I can. We can share lives and share and decide that when I have more than enough, I can give you my extra in your national grid. But you don't muzzle me and say, I can't do this, and yet you expect me to provide light to my people. So that bottleneck has been why states who could have, take Bayelsa State, for instance, there's gas everywhere, Delta, who could generate in River State and make it, I think it's 100 megawatts. He couldn't transmit it. He had to sell it to the national grid. And yet Rivers people had no light. So I think that now that the policy is changing, we need to go back to the drawing board and expand the transmission. For me, a modular system is feasible. You don't have to do all of it one time. You can incrementally continue to increase transmission capacity and then upload the grid until such a point where things are working. Also, you must have breaker system. It's not because one section of the grid has an issue, the entire grid will collapse. They should have feeder systems and breaker systems that feedback the system. Where there's a problem in a particular line, it trips up and the other keeps working. These are the systems that other countries like South Africa, like Europe, they're all using to run power in their systems. And I think until we begin to be practical about what we want to do, all these policies we are doing, all this change of policies, all this blame game, won't fix the power problem. We started this power challenge from 2011 or then about when the IPP started, the Presidential Power Initiative started, or the NIPP started, and we're still here. There is no one successful program, not in Abuja, not in Lagos. Those are the two major cities in the country that is working seamlessly, except where there are gas turbines in certain sub-communities.
And, to corroborate what you said, some experts have also said there may be a lack of will to address this issue holistically. But let's look at the place of possibly climate change, climate disruption, and all of this. Beyond the vandalism of power infrastructure, the lack of free governance of power generation plants and uncoordinated maintenance schedules, there are also, claims of weather and maybe climate change. Is that a likely factor in Nigeria at this time?
I think that again.
Right, I'm asking you about climate change, climate disruptions. If it is a likely factor as part of the issues that we have having in terms of the grid collapse.
Well, I think it's aging. You have infrastructure that have lived their time. We're not moving with the time. We're using things of the 70s in this generation. We're building on weak infrastructure. We're not expanding new lines. And so we're having challenges. We're talking about climate change. Well, look at America. With all those storms and all of that, their power outages are not longer than they should be. There are alternative pathways for those power, including communication. So yes, what's climate change doing here? We haven't had hurricanes or, should I say, earthquakes that will say are causing the problems. What we've just had is breaches or snappies or outright destructions or disruption by vandals. Now, excuse me, if the place is fired and there's power, there will be likelihood of less interference by vandals because they know that they will get electrocuted. They know that there will be problems on the line. But most times, there's no power on the line, so people just go and remove what they need to take away. And then when the power comes in, you can't transmit. So I think that sustainability would be, one, look at the policy properly, encourage sincere, genuine partnership. Why is Siemens AG not doing what it has done in Egypt within 2 years since the last 11 years in Nigeria? Corruption, outright corruption. You're putting this so much billions. I think Egypt spent about 36 million or so thereabout of $1 billion to transform their system, but they are benefiting massively from that statistics. Now, Nigeria has proposed so much to spend on electricity. Whether it is spending it or not every year, Nigerians don't know. There's no accountability. So the companies who want to invest are just wondering what's wrong with the country. If you're going to generate power and you need to spend so much to generate that power, then spend it on the power. Don't spend it on corruptions, on plannings, on meetings. At the end of all those money spent, you do not even see the power generated. So commitment, the lack of will is the number one issue there. Number two, we're not realistic about what we want to do. We are more a country of mouthing things than doing things. Most of the things that have held us back are not rocket science. They are not. They are simple things. We're not building spaceships. We're talking about electricity, transmission from gas, from hydro, so let's say hydro dams are expensive and take a long time to build. What about the gas turbines? They are generators. You buy them in and put them in modulars and expand them. And then you transmit transmission cables. If you do not have the technical partners, then partner with the country that has it to train our engineers. We do have manpower here. We do have human resource here, and we can get this done, but it is the lack of willpower. We do ceremonies with everything. We just want to showcase things. We plan to spend about $100 billion to access electricity 100%, but I can tell you have $100 billion. I can tell you if I have to spend over and above that money and we still have no power. We're talking about an initiative that started from Obasanjo, through Yar'Adua, through Jonathan, through Buhari, through now Tinubu, and it's a big issue. I was saying that $39 billion was spent by Egypt to move its own from basically where they invested the $4.4 billion before. They moved it up to $39 billion from basically 15 megawatts to 60 megawatts, and they have lights in their country. Egypt don't have as much gas as we do have. Perhaps they have an hydro dam. We have dams everywhere, hydro dams everywhere. We are combining the total capacity that we have now that they say is about 7,000 megawatts. 4,000 is from gas turbines. And we've not even explored the gas opportunity. So we can even, in my own thinking, I'm not an expert in this field, but I can imagine where if government's own responsibility alone is to even take gas to every local government and then find a partnership with local governments and federal governments or state governments to have each one their own turbine power, even if as low as 50 megawatts per LGA, to generate power for them, while leaving the national grid to run national investment and businesses. So every community probably will be able to access electricity, and then businesses and the economy can thrive. Everything has an impact on road and electricity. If you want to produce today, and then you don't have light, you have to buy diesel, and it's very expensive. You will transfer that cost into cost of production, and then it will be at the end users and to pay. So yes, willpower. Two, corruption are the two most endemic things in the power structure that we're facing today.
And before we talk about decentralization, having states have their own grid in that sense, we saw the minister earlier this week saying that it's actually a lot to maintain for those who were suggesting a hydropower plant as used in other climes, and that what we have now is quite old and we actually need to continue to manage what we have on ground. Perhaps we should be looking at a holistic replacement of some of these infrastructures.
Yeah, so that's my problem. You don't elect people into power and then to begin to cry like babies. You elect them into power to solve problems for the rest of all of us. All of us can solve the problem. And I think that, clearly speaking, we're not a serious country in so many things. We're more concerned about status, office space, resources to spend in trips in Europe. We're more concerned about seminars abroad when we have all that we need in one country. This is one country so endowed. one country that the world should be coming to, because we have every climate and every weather and every kind of thing that others are looking to in different parts in one country. But we are a people who just feel that we should just pay far from national resources and work on. Why would the minister even say it's impossible to just expand transmission lines? Why would the minister even say it's impossible to just bring in new equipment that we do not produce, we just pay for? We're borrowing money. What are we borrowing this money to do? If we're borrowing money, let's borrow money for serious things. Energy infrastructure, mechanized agriculture, road infrastructure, so that the backlash of all these things will be progressive integration of our economy. But we borrow money for the wrong things. We've not been able to do transmission. We're talking about spaceship in a country. It's not possible. We're talking about tunnels. It's not possible. So if we're talking about electric cars, how do you drive those cars? And the only reason they're talking about that is because of the COP28 and the carbon credit issue. Everybody wants to tap into that and quickly get some free money or whatever from the United Nations. But are we ready? Why is the electricity to drive electric cars? So it's a big problem, and until we fix that, we're not going to have this thing solved. They can bout it, they can talk about it, they can blame everybody. But if you are transmitting with cables that are carrying energies on grids that is way above what it should do, they will snap. If people have vandalized a section of it, there will be grid collapse. If the transmitters and the transformers are not functional and obsolete, it will collapse. And no matter how you patch it, let's break it down. I just by my hospital, there's a transformer that I met there 15 years ago, and we were a few numbers using it. We had light almost 18 hours. As the area continued to open up, the transformer keep blowing up. And people keep going there to add one wire, increase the wire. These NEPA people would do that. It became a problem, and at the time for 6 months, there was no light. We had to say, expand and decentralize. Now they brought more transformers and expand the area. So the country is enlarging, production companies are expanding, discos are more now, and people are taking lights to where there were no lights before. You do not expect the carrying capacity of those equipments to remain the same. They need to be expanded, but they can be done in small bits until we achieve the total. We can't keep managing things.
And I agree with you. Some experts have also said this can be done in phases. And beyond the losses that we've seen as a result of this great collapse in businesses and other areas of the economy, the Gencos also are complaining. But we've seen in one breath the TCN saying it's the DISCO's inability to take the load, and also informing us in that same breath that we should expect more. How optimistic are you about this interagency committee recommendation that the minister has asked to be implemented?
Yeah, so I have learned a lot in this country about interagency relationship. They even don't want to work together. Each one will try to sabotage the other one because they want to independently manipulate processes and all of that. So I think that the minister should set up a task force whose duty is short-lived, with a timeline and with a matching order to get things done from those timelines. So the interagency planning should put it on the table for a task force, an implementation task force that will have a timeline. Within the next 6 months is where we want to be. Within the next 6 months is where we want to be. And then the presidential initiative should be there to back that task force to get the deliverables on the table. It has to be some kind of radical approach to solve this power quagmire.
Right. And beyond some of these issues that you've mentioned, another major issue is the sabotage to some of these networks. There are reports that some individuals are taking advantage of this collapse situation and maybe trying to sabotage the situation. According to what is in their interagency committee report and the implementation thereafter, what are the likely solutions to things like this, especially when you mentioned earlier that there is a lack of will to address the situation?
Okay, so that sabotage thing is like a national anthem now. We have it in the pipeline products and the petroleum products where people are sabotaging national pipelines, and they set up some kind of security companies to fight those vandals. I don't know. I think the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps is doing something with all those kind of stuff. We have all these agencies of government that should monitor and ensure that the lines are secured in some kind of way. Maybe I think we just need to work on more securing those infrastructures and ensuring that if there are such people, they are well prosecuted and dealt with. Unfortunately, it's only people who are not patriotic to country that will continue to do that. I also hope that they're not looking for just excuses to justify their failures. Because like I said earlier on, if you have lines of power, energy on the lines, it will be difficult for people to go and do that. And really, without internal, should I say, insiders conspiracy, it's sometimes very difficult for some people to just come from nowhere and know which of the lines to knife in, knife out, and then steal these materials. Because if they steal it, they recycle it again for the same companies to buy. That's what happens. If they steal it, they recycle it again. So if you have licensor or licensed traders in those items, you also need to track. There's what you call follow through. You follow the trend of what's happening with those vandals and try to use stringent measures to ensure that we reduce, if not stop totally, what is happening. That's my own take on those issues.
Right, I would like to quickly take you on this decentralization that you may have touched on earlier about the role of state in this. Some persons have suggested that the state governments may have to also participate in providing distributed generations. But doesn't this really concern states that are actually generating revenue? Or how are they likely to, contract or give out some of these licenses for people to generate and distribute power in the states?
Okay, so every state is not one size fits all mechanism. In Edo State, for instance, Baseki, the outgoing governor, just got involved, and then you have this gas that's lying down there in the local area for so long, and they brought in PPP and they generated their own energy. And what they did first was, since the federal government says you can't transmit, you can't give to other persons, they supply their government institutions and schools. So those schools knock off the national grid and start paying power consumption to the transmission company for that private partnership. And as they went on with the removal of the laws, with the amendment of the concurrent list where states can now distribute also, they are now supplying to businesses. So in Edo State, you have the choice to choose between the federal lines or the state lines. Of course, the prices are different. You choose what you want. And then the major challenge they're having in Edo State is that they need to set up their transmission network. They're still doing that, but they're doing it in what you call modular sessions. So they're looking at where business opportunities are better, and they're going there first with the power. So businesses are taking those power, and then they will disseminate it slowly to other areas. For instance, in all the ministries in Edo State, there's lights 24 hours because government is taking light to their people. So, and then in Abia State, I haven't been in Aba in a while, but I've read that Governor Uti had also fired Abana because of the industrial network, and there's light 24. That's a big one, and everybody's paying to consume light. Friends of mine have called to say Aba is completely a turnaround city where cost of production is down because there's electricity. So every state will look at what works for them, and then those who have gas should quickly and fastly invest in those infrastructure and sell power, because it's not going to be a waste anyway. People need power. It's more cheaper to use those fired power to the national grid or state supply power substations than running a diesel generator. It's far like 50% or lesser or more. So I think states who want to be sure that their citizens are happy and businesses are doing well in their states, life is bearable for their citizens, should look at partnerships with companies around the world for power generation.
Right, Chris, the minister has ordered an implementation of this report, and we're hoping for a more positive outcome and not, this incessant collapse of the national grid affected businesses and the economy at large. But thank you very much for joining us on the Standpoint. Convener Integration Summit Group, Chris Akio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Let's hope that someday we'll have light 24.
We're still watching the Standpoint on TVC News. Be back with more after this break. Stay with us.